Welcome to podcast 126 from Wiggly Wigglers. We're actually on tour this week. We've gone on a mega trip off. But in the meantime, I am Heather from Wiggly Wigglers and I'm joined today by...
Farmer Phil.
No, Ricardo. Ricardo is off hobnobbing it with the presenter from Blue Peter or some such. He's at the Three Counties Showground and he's talking to lots of schools about eco-gardening and wildlife, and I expect he's got up to his elbows in worms by now. But we have travelled. We've got in the Wiggly Mobile and we are at Michael and Mary's studio. Mary is busy in the other room and she's making up all the labels for the new Wiggly products. So I'm sat here with Salad Blue 1900 1 kilo, which is a spud. But today we're going to solve a Heather mystery. You know how it is for me. I don't necessarily know all about this growing stuff and I tend to get in a muddle. So last weekend I really wanted to plant up some salad leaves because when you go to Waitrose, I don't know if you've ever bought them in a packet, but they're really expensive. You open up the plastic and they go off really quickly, and what's the excuse when we're on a farm we could grow our own? I go to the veggie patch and they're not ready yet and I think, no, I want to do it myself, but then I think I should use my own worm compost. Then I think, if I use my own worm compost, I have to mix it up. If I mix it up, do I use a wooden seed tray? How would I know how much water to put on it? So I go and get the Charles Dowding book on salad leaves, and I start reading that, and of course that means that I never get round to actually planting the salad leaves. So we'll hear about that. Farmer Phil, do you know anything about planting salad leaves?
Not a lot, other than the fact that I've seen some interesting looking trays appear on the windowsill.
Don't give it away. I might not have succeeded. Now they'll know. I've done it.
Only got 2 chances, haven't you? It'll either grow or not.
We've also going to find out about ELS insecticide and why the cattle are happy and why they were particularly happy last month. But in the meantime, let's have a Monty's Farmcast. They're corking the earth. They are absolutely corking.
Montycast, a weekly fact on farming. There are more than 1 billion cattle in the world, about 200 million in India. Another Montycast, a weekly fact on farming, next week.
Thank you, Monty. Farmer Phil, you've got a letter in, haven't you?
I have.
Email.
I was wondering when some of these had come. Anyway, this is from Sue Roberts. I don't actually know where Sue is from, but anyway, here we go. Dear team, I wasn't sure where to send this email, but we would be grateful if you would pass it on to Heather, or after the How Dare You podcast, you may want
How dare you?
You may want to pass it to Richard as ammunition.
How very dare you?
I definitely wouldn't give Richard any ammunition, but anyway. When the new catalogue came through, I excitedly looked for the goat socks. Heather had done such a good selling job on the podcast, since I spend a lot of my time in wellies, but tumble dryers? Now, does this mean that they take so long to dry that Heather had to try to dry them in a tumble dryer? I don't have a tumble dryer.
Of course not.
Of course, you turn the page after the goat socks and we're on to eco-gadgets. Then we have the next How Dare You podcast.
How dare you?
Seriously though, I'd like to know how quick slow drying they are. Do love the podcast and look forward to hearing more from Rachel. I think she means Rachel Harries.
She does.
On that thing, given the subject matter. Well, anyway, Sue, I'm pleased to tell you that I am obviously an expert with the washing department, and because goat socks are natural fibres, they are quite quick to dry. The reason that we use a tumble dryer from time to time is that we have approaching 40 inches of rain a year, which means that for a number of days the other option isn't much of one, in as much that they come in wetter than when they went out.
We have got a drying rack. But of course we're not the sort to waste energy on an Arga. Have you got an Arga, Sue? Because they are awful. Anyway, I'm going to take my boot off. Listen, everyone, to reveal the goat sock. And the great thing is that you've given me another opportunity to sell them. And the key thing about goat socks are, if you've got sweaty feet, that makes the goat sock wet. But because it's hair, not wool, it dries out really quickly. So let's just wheel over to Farmer Phil and he can feel the foot.
Not pleasant to feel, but I have to say not malodorous in any way. But
Radio.
for my part, Goat Socks and Heather, the key thing is that she loves them so much that she doesn't steal mine.
You haven't got any goat socks.
Well, not at the moment,
No.
but I will have when I've worn out my current set of socks. There is history here, of course, because Heather has been known to cut up perfectly good socks for reasons I don't understand. So.
Moving on. Goat socks are corking. There's no way you can get away from it. They're absolutely amazing. And it's so good that today is the most beautiful day. And I got up and I thought, should I wear my short trousers with Crocs or should I stick to goat socks and boots? And I did stick to goat socks and boots. The power of radio. You could almost smell that foot. Anyway, let's go on because I want to know why last month the cattle were so happy. Why in March were the cattle happy, Farmer Phil?
Well, here in Herefordshire, and this doesn't go for the rest of the world or necessarily the rest of the country, but anyway, here in Herefordshire we've had a relatively stable, cold, dry month, and for the cattle those conditions are absolutely fantastic. So there's no disease, the calves are healthy, the cows are healthy, and basically they don't get too hot.
Yes, but the thing is, if they like it cold, which would make sense because they seem to have got a very good coat, why do you put them in a shed?
Well, because normally we would expect the winter months to be much wetter. That's why I say that it's unusual to have a dry month and it's cold and been somewhat frosty, which is great. You have to be careful. It is a balance. It's a case of whether you turn them out in the mud and ruin the field and risk them suffering because they can't get into the dry, or you have them inside and they get too warm.
Unfortunately, the same doesn't go for the Wiggly catalogue. You know, when we dreamt up when we would send the catalogue, we decided it would be Easter, and we discussed what would happen if it was raining. Well, it was snowing, so I'm not sure whether or not that was the best time to send the catalogue, but hopefully you're going to keep hold of it, dear listener. Let's go and listen to yesterday's recording when Richard and I got together with some seeds, some compost, and a big watering can in the kitchen. Ooh, I did fall over it, sorry. Right, a Heather mystery is going to be cleared up today, one which caused a little grin from Ricardo, wasn't it?
Yeah, not as much as watching The Wizard of Oz on last weekend.
Why do you mean that, Rich?
That's funny, especially the way you just spoke to me in front of that Guardian photographer that just came in when we mentioned that you had a leading role.
In The Wizard of Oz?
The Wizard of Oz, yeah.
Is this because of my hair, dude?
Yeah.
The dye is kindly...
Yeah, no, she wasn't impressed, was she, with my comments about you looking like the Lion in The Wizard of Oz.
She wasn't. Sorry, Di.
Yeah, shame. Sorry, Di. I must admit, it's no reflection of your hairdressing abilities. I was purely abusing Heather, not your skills.
Anyway,
So,
Di,
yeah.
I'd like it straightened and in a bob, like Jean Brodie.
Oh, really?
I've had too much stick
gonna be
now.
unachievable.
Please, Di, cut my hair. Anyway, Rich, here is the Heather mystery.
Yeah.
And
That's
that
a
is,
funny one, isn't it?
I really fancy growing my own salad leaves.
Yeah.
And I should know
think you
exactly how to do it,
Yeah.
but I haven't got the confidence to go and do it, so I get the salad book, and I get muddled up in it, which is the best way,
Right.
how to do it,
Yeah.
how long is it going to take.
I think sometimes, when you read books, everything becomes so much more complicated, or it seems to be more complicated than it is, because actually, growing stuff is invariably a piece of cake.
Is it,
It's
though?
really quite that easy, yeah.
Because
some
if we
things are
look
more
over
difficult to
here
grow than
at
others.
my dead herbs,
Yeah, well, if we just need a bit of water. Well, that parsley's wilted purely because, it's a bit thirsty. So water is key. Plants do need water. They're like, you see your cactuses.
they're going well.
Or cacti, should I say, they're thriving. They like their arid orange household. But the other things, the sage and the thyme and the parsley and the oregano and everything else that's dead in the windowsill needs water.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't rate your sprouts doing it all well, because they definitely need watering twice a day, which is why there are no sprouts in the sprouter, I suppose. The sprouter does look nice, though, it looks the part, but, yeah, a bit of aqua squirted on there a couple of times a day does the trick. So anyway, yeah,
Okay,
we're
of
going to
course, you don't want the teacher to be sarcastic
not
with
at
a
all.
pupil,
No,
do you?
no.
So, okay, here we are then.
So we've got these Ace seed trays. These are our Wiggly seed trays, which are quite smart. I mean, they're wooden ones. I mean, at home, say, if I wasn't using this, just a normal flat plastic seed tray. And I put these two in a waterproof container, because what we'll do is put the compost in here and then water it. So you need something underneath to contain the water. So what I use at home, is old paint. That you put paint roller trays, those kind of things, because they've got matted in paint over the years. Like, you get loads, because if you're doing DIY, then Sarah goes out and buys a new one every time. So
I do that.
I just keep them. So I've got loads. So I keep, because they're great size. They're just about the right size for these seed trays.
What do you do with the roller then?
The rollers, well, they tend to perish, don't they? They don't last long. They dry up, and they don't. They're not reusable, unfortunately. But so that's what I use, and then that works a treat. So I put these two in here. And what we do is we'll find a knife first in your kitchen. Now that looks quite nice. The new open knife. Nice.
It's very nice.
Yeah, it is very nice. Yeah.
Do you know, I saw Roy at Cowpats. Now you all know that we've got our community access point. He rushed up to me. Well, he didn't rush because Roy's 80 something.
Right.
But he came up to me and he said, "Heather, your new catalogue is fantastic." I said, "Why is that, Roy?" He said, "It's got Opinel knives in it." He said,
Really?
"I've had an Opinel knife for years and years."
Since the
he said,
DOS.
"Here it is," and he brought it out of his pocket and showed me.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm coming up to get another one."
Oh, fantastic.
They are good.
They are good. Well, we sold out, haven't we? We had to just buy a load more stock in.
Yeah, number 7 and number 10. You've got a bit of compost in my tea.
I have. But it's all good stuff. This compost has been treated, so it's made from. This is a number 1, a Genie number 1. We sell this now because we've changed our compost supply, so we sell this, and we trialled some of this, Jodie and I, and it's fantastic stuff. I started a load of onions, and I've started tomatoes and things.
What's
like
the
that.
number 1 mean then?
Well, it just means it's a grade. So there's 1, 2, 3 grades, and you get multi-purpose as well. So the number 1 is the finer. So it's been graded to be the finest compost. So this is a great compost to start seedlings off in.
But listen, Rich, if I was on my own on a Saturday puzzling over this,
Yeah.
the reason that I would never start is because I would start to feel so bad about not using my worm compost.
Oh, okay.
And so then I would think about mixing my compost, and then I would think about I haven't got any sand, and then I would think about this and that and the other, until I wouldn't do anything.
Okay. Well, a worm compost, you know what Terry Walton did this year? He used a load of his worm, because it's fantastic, just to mix with either a little bit of this or with some soil or some leaf litter, some well-watered leaf litter. And you probably use 1 part worm compost, to 3 parts of this, or leaf litter or soil.
Right.
And it's really, really good stuff. I mean, it sends these broad beans, it sends them into oblivion this year because he's used that. It's really accelerated their growth. So it's fantastic stuff. So you can do that. But for the sake of ease, and because we're keeping all our lovely worm compost for up-and-coming demonstrations.
Well, I normally put it on top of... You know what I do with it? I put it on the raised beds and I just sprinkle it out there.
Yeah.
Because...
It's a good thing to do, actually.
Is it?
That's why your vegetables are so good in your raised beds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is for beginners then.
So this is a
Don't feel bad.
This is a really straightforward way of doing it.
Okay.
So you just split your bag open and you get your lovely handfuls of this stuff. So it's great to think that this was, of course, a bit like the worm compost. Your own worm compost is your own tea bags and peelings and things. And exactly, this is made from people's household waste. It's just collected by the bin man.
Is it?
Yeah, and then it's kind of
not
heat
bad, is
treated.
it?
No, it's really good stuff. It smells lovely and earthy, doesn't it? So you kind of spread it out in there. It's dead simple. And like that in your seed tray.
So we've got 2 seed trays.
Yeah, we've got 2 seed trays purely because of space. I'm thinking of your space because you want to put this in your windowsill, don't you?
Yeah.
To start them off. Really, the space you've got available to you will determine how many seed trays you can have. So
you're tamping it down now?
Now, in fact, we do sell lovely little pot tampers, don't we, which we'll use actually when we're planting on our seedlings. But for the purposes of today's exercise, I'll just use the back of my hand.
Now, why are you doing that? Because I thought that compost needed lots of air in it.
Yeah, it does need lots of air, but it will have lots of air anyway. Because I'm only tamping it down so it's relatively firm. Because seeds like a firmed base. They don't like
apple
it
crumble.
too loose.
Same amount of tamping as crumble.
Depending on whose apple crumble it is, I suppose. But yours, probably quite hard. Yeah. Probably quite tough.
Hey, Rachel's cake was lovely, wasn't it?
Rachel's cake was stunning, actually.
Yeah.
I'm well chuffed with Rachel's cake. It's going to be my turn to make a cake soon, isn't it?
I think it is, really.
So we'll do that in that one, and then we'll do exactly the same in this other one. I mean, we're doing this on the kitchen table. You can do it outside, but it's kind of nice to do it indoors because the wind's blowing, and if you've got the luxury of a reasonable sized kitchen table, you can put some old newspaper sheets. So I'm spreading it back out into all the corners of the tray. getting it level using my little rotating
how many
fingers.
inches?
Well,
How much?
these seed trays are what, 2.5 inches deep?
How would I know how much depth my plant needs?
Generally speaking, most seedlings you start off in seed trays or plugs or something like that, and they're only ever going to be a couple of inches deep. Because what you tend to do is you start them off in shallow compost and then you transplant them. And that's exactly what we'll do with these lettuces. These guys are cut and come again. So ideal for growing in the house because, of course, you can keep going to them. And they do need water, that is the only thing. So you're going to have to mend your waterless ways.
So cut and come again.
Cut and come again.
Means I chop them off.
Yeah, so you chop the outside leaves, like you do chard or perpetual spinach, something like that. The red salad bowl and the green salad bowl that we're going to use here, and the saladini, they're all the same thing, a mix of leaves, and endives and stuff like that. That's all cut and come again. So you quite literally keep cutting the outside leaves, and it keeps coming up from the middle all the time. It's fantastic stuff. So it's mineral-rich salad for probably 4 months, something like that, even longer possibly.
Here's another Heather mystery then. So I've got 2 small seed trays. They're about, 8 inches wide by maybe 13 inches long. And if I buy a bag of salad leaves in Waitrose, I think it's about £1.49 for a small bag.
Yeah.
How much salad am I going to have here for Farmer Phil's tea, do you reckon?
A lot more than you'll need.
Right, so is this
an
economic process?
Very economical, yeah, absolutely. I mean, growing vegetables, and actually it's going more and more economical, you know. Those salad bags are very expensive.
Yeah.
And the crap they spray on that and those leaves, you know, and then they kind of insulate them in those bags.
Not a Waitrose farmer.
Yeah,
surely.
Well, the way they package, they have to, because there's various contaminants put in there in order to keep those leaves in tip-top condition. Because as soon as you crack them open, they deteriorate within hours, you know. So, yeah, dodgy stuff. So anyway, what should we have? The red salad bowl first.
Fancy that,
we just rip that little thing open there, and then inside is a lovely little pack of seeds.
How do you know that these are going to germinate? Because I heard Terry on his podcast. What's it called?
What is it called? I don't know. I think it's just called The Allotment with Terry or something like that. Terry Walton's Allotment. I should know this, shouldn't I?
Who knows? But Richard stars on it every month.
Yeah,
anyway, he said that he would only buy seeds from somebody or other. I think it was Sutton's.
Yeah.
Which I was particularly peeved about.
No, but it's because he's an old codger and he's just got set in his ways.
So, but the thing is, though, Rich,
I didn't really tell you.
But how would we know that these are okay?
Well, we know these are okay because we know when these were packed. We know Pippa has packed these at the latter part of last year when her salads were going to seed, because she grows these on her plot in England, and they're packaged and they're contained and stored in such a way that the seed, it has wonderful integrity.
Right.
So we know that, absolutely. Seed
and
does die if
them
it's
cold,
kept.
don't
Yeah, we keep them in a cold store. We keep them in a dry situation in a cold store, so we know they're absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now is take these little seeds out, which I suppose look a little bit like fenugreek seeds or something like that, don't they?
Don't know,
Rich. Well, kind of. And then I'm just quite literally sprinkling them around in this seed. There's no real science here, but I'm putting them far enough apart because the luxury of lettuces is they're so easy to transplant. You can transplant them and disturb the roots ridiculously, and they'll still be absolutely fine.
So wait a minute, you mean I'm not going to be harvesting from these trays?
Yeah, no, you won't be harvesting from these trays.
Why not then?
Because within these trays there'll be hundreds of plants. So,
right.
we'll have to transplant, and also the medium isn't deep enough for a mature root.
Right, okay.
So this is only going to sustain the seedlings.
Inside, can I?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because what we're going to do is we'll start them off in here. We'll put a little layer of compost over the top of these just now.
Okay.
In a minute.
So how many? It's just so rough, isn't it?
It is kind of. Well, that's the beauty of gardening, really. I mean, I think it's a shame to make it too scientific because, you know, it spoils the earthiness of the whole process.
I reckon that you've sowed 100 seeds in there.
Yeah, got to be at least. Well, if you look in that corner there, was there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Crikey, there's probably there's 10 there, so at least 150 little plants in there. So that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll do exactly the same thing with our green salad bowl on the other side.
Now I know it's now beginning of April. So is that too late to do this then?
No, it's absolutely fine. I mean, we could have done this a little bit earlier. I mean, you'd have to do it. You sow and start things off in the house, and then you can transfer it to a greenhouse. And I mean, Terry, for instance, starts off a lot of his stuff, but he's got a heated greenhouse. He's got a little paraffin heater in the
I know, I
greenhouse.
heard all
Fires
about
out.
it.
Right. So
Yeah. And the airing cupboard.
Yeah. He's so into it, isn't he? Most green-fingered Welshman that ever was. So I'm just doing exactly the same thing over here, spreading these little guys out. You know, I can almost guarantee that practically every single one of these will germinate.
Right, well, I've remembered there's 3 in that corner there.
Yeah, there are. So
I'll look for those.
I mean, you don't really need to worry about lettuces too much, but you can quite literally, the roots will bind together and you can quite literally pull them apart, tease the roots apart before you transplant them, which we will do at some stage.
How long will these take to grow then?
You should start to germinate within 7 to 10 days.
Right.
So not long at all, really. And then within the warm, I mean, it's got to be, 60, 70 degrees in this room, I reckon? Something
Yeah, but
like
I was
that.
going to put them in the dining room where there's...
Is it going to be even warmer?
Less.
Oh, less.
Yeah.
Well,
I put them in the sun?
still about, yeah, they like it in the sun. It's nice. It just warms the soil. And what we'll also do is we'll put a big plastic bag, a clear plastic bag over this. We'll try and find one knocking around here when you've used before.
Right.
And we'll put that over there, and that adds extra warmth. So it's a bit like a greenhouse situation, really. So you get more heat radiating onto the lovely compost underneath. So that encourages germination as well. The
Should do it with a piece of glass then?
Piece of glass would be fine. Yeah.
I haven't got one.
No. Well, the piece of glass, I mean, it's a bit dodgy when you've got Labradors and dogs and Labradors and cats and little Monties and these knocking around the house.
Yeah.
So we'll steer clear of glass and use
Okay.
plastic bag.
Okay, so should we add the compost?
so
Should
let's-
I let Toast in?
Yeah, Toast wants to come in.
Yeah, here we go. Come on, ducks. Okay, so you're going to add some extra compost.
So all I'm doing now
No
is
water
quite
yet,
literally-
then?
Not yet.
No.
So I'm just literally sprinkling the compost lightly over the top. So,
Okay.
So literally just a couple of mils over the top of the seeds, like so. People often think that they need to bury seeds deeply, but of course if you think about it, in nature, really seeds disperse, land on the ground, get a little bit of covering of leaf litter, and they just germinate. So it's a misconception to put seeds deeply. You can put seeds too deeply. When you're planting big seed, like broad beans and whatnot, it's worth planting them deep enough so as they don't push themselves out of the ground when they shit. But
When they
generally
what?
speaking, shit, when they shoot, when the little shoots appear. Shitting. So I've literally tapped that down with my hand again. Do you like that
Yeah.
little pattern?
Very nice.
And,
Just like my crumble.
Yeah.
Farmer
just like
Phil
your
always
crumble.
says to me, why is there all this handprints in the crumble have?
It's because you're a creative soul. You like to put your mark on your food. Right, so there you go. So I've kind of tapped that down again with my hand. Left
No
a few
water.
little handprints. No water just yet.
Right.
So I'll move this. I mean, normally what I would do is take this outside to water. But
Yep.
because we can do it inside and it's your kitchen table, I don't mind soaking
Oh
it.
no! Massive watering can
yeah,
has
big-
come into
so
the
it's a lovely
kitchen.
New
Oh
water
no!
can. Now this is an interesting one. You know the rows on here?
On
If
the
you-
end of the spout.
Yeah, when on the end of the spout, it's facing down at the moment. It's never a good idea to water with the rows facing down because it tends to gush out and then you saturate and erode a lot of your planting medium, your sown medium. So turn the rows facing skywards like that.
Handy hint.
Yeah, so it's a good thing to do. I don't know why.
Oh. Oh!
Anyway, you have your little spunkles.
Good
that
Lord.
newspaper's super absorptive.
And that's gone in your tea
Yeah,
now.
that's nice. I've got a bit of pond water in my tea.
Okay.
That's the flavour. So I'm giving it a good soak anyway because,
How do you know how much?
Well, again, it's a kind of just a feeling, really.
Right.
So, I tend to saturate it, but
Yeah.
and then you don't do anything with it then. You just leave it. So, and when you put the bag over the top, when you put your plastic bag over the top, your compost doesn't dry out quickly in the same way that it would if it's left uncovered. So you can quite literally now cover this in a bag and leave it until the seedlings appear.
Okay, so we'll get our bag and we'll put the bag over top, put it in the window,
Yep.
and then I do nothing for 7 days.
Nope.
And then once they are how big?
Once they're, usually when they got their second, possibly even third leaves, I reckon we'll probably transplant them when they get to about 3 or 4 inches tall.
Okay, and then what are we going to do with them then?
And then we'll transplant each little individual plant into a pot of its own. So
Into
it's
a
one of
clay
our
pot?
lovely little terracotta
Oh,
clay pots. Yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So, superb.
Thanks, Rich, for that handy little
Yeah,
lesson.
no, well, so you know now for next
Yeah.
time, don't you?
Now I've got a little treat for you.
Oh,
I'm going to the fridge. Here we go.
very smart fridge.
Do you like yoghurt?
I do. Oh, by the water can. Kick the bucket just yet. Oh wow, yeah, the yoghurt. Because we've been talking about this. First thing to think is, oh yeah, it's an interesting consistency.
There you are.
Is it nice?
I've
It's a
made
nice
this
flavour.
yoghurt in the yoghurt maker.
That's really nice, isn't it?
I think it's
That's
nice.
really nice. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. It's got semi-skim milk
There's a compost in it as well, now.
and just a little bit of Jersey cream.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really tasty, you know.
Yeah. You can have that.
Really? Oh, excellent. That's
Enjoy yourself.
Cheers.
Yoghurt and compost. God, look at those little black bits in
That's
there.
really good for you. Yeah. No, I don't mind those black bits at all.
So earthy.
So you were none.
So there they are. They're on our windowsill.
We shall watch with interest.
Now then, taters,
Spudleys,
potatoes,
pomme de terre,
apples of the soil. Have we run out?
tubers.
It's time. It's time to plant your spuds. And if you want to know more about it, go to Karen's blog, wigglyWigglers.blogspot.com, and it gives you lots of details. And Mary's in the other room, and she's writing up an e-news that will go out. So if you want to register for the e-news, go to wigglyWigglers.co.uk and press a button under the catalogue somewhere there. It says click to subscribe. So if you'd like to receive our e-news, do that.
I read somewhere that in the late 1800s, when there were extremely hard times out in the countryside of Britain, that one of the ways that people ate food and guaranteed food for themselves in the future was that they thick peeled their seed potatoes, ate the middle and planted the peel.
Richard still does that.
Well, that's probably because he's just tight, isn't it? I thought it was quite an ingenious way of carrying on, but it did demonstrate how times have changed.
Anyway, the ones that I'm going for this year are salad blues, which I just can't resist them because they're not blue. They're more indigo than the indigo wheat is.
Hey, I'm not having any of that.
Anyway,
They're purple.
that rattling sound is Phil fidgeting on his chair. But they were first grown in Scotland in the 1900s, and they make a novelty blue mash. And the colour comes from an anthocyanin pigment. And anthocyanins are powerful antioxidants. The skin and the flesh are both a strong deep blue. So Hannah is planting some up in the Wiggly garden as we speak. You can buy them in the grocers in Ludlow and they are absolutely delicious, said Michael. Listen, Richard's not here, so I feel a bit unfair mentioning this, but I just want to moot the topic because you and I, over a honey toasty the other day, were discussing ELS and set aside. Run it by me briefly, and then we'll get back to this subject when we've got Ricardo on the sofa.
Well, briefly, ELS stands for entry-level scheme, and that's the base standard environmental scheme that the government offer us farmers in England.
Not in Europe.
No, because each country has different versions of the same things. So the ELS has an equivalent in Wales, for example. So in Wales, it's called Tir Cynnal, and we've entered the farm in Wales for Tir Cynnal. So
how do you spell it?
Cynnal.
No, Tir.
Tir, Tir.
Oh.
Sorry. I'm not very up on my Welsh language, but anyway. But
what's it do?
Essentially, the idea is that some of the subsidy we receive gets redirected towards environmental specific schemes rather than just producing food, and that's
margins around
the fields. Very briefly, the way it works is that you have a menu of environmental things that you could do, and they score points, and you have to make up a specific number of points, i.e. 12 an acre actually is the figure, to qualify for your money. That reaches the threshold. Now, there are any number of different ways of doing this, but the issue at the moment is that the reports are starting to come back that the environmental benefits are possibly not quite what they thought they were for some of those menu options, and also the government, despite having promised that they wouldn't, have changed the criteria for scoring the points. So you set yourself up to work out how to claim your ELS, but they've moved the goalposts. Now,
just a minute. This is farmers getting money for doing nothing and pretending to be green.
No, I think it's governments pretending to be green by paying farmers to do things which are, in some cases, fairly arbitrary.
So did you go into the ELS?
No,
why not?
I refused to on principle.
But why would you refuse to? Because that would make you greener.
Because my thinking on...
rather than purpler, like your wheat. No.
My thinking on the environment that my farm is that I should want to preserve it because it's mine, and I should take advice from organisations such as FWAG, the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, as to how best to do it, and that I should be paid enough for my food that I produce off the rest of the farm to be able to afford to keep the whole thing nice.
Well, that's very well and good, but most farmers would not think like that, and they would probably think, actually, it's more cost effective for me to grow one crop or do one thing intensively, and the environment is not paying its way. So they would receive that money, and then that would make a positive impact on the environment, because genuinely, otherwise they wouldn't do that. And that's been the problem for the last 40 years, hasn't it?
Probably fair comment, but the ELS payment is £12 an acre. So that if you take land out of production to put it into ELS and receive £12 an acre, that doesn't stack up very well at growing a high-value arable crop on the same acre. So that if the farmer is just doing it for the money, the environment stands no chance that way. But if the farmer makes enough profit to say, it's my farm and I live in it and I want it to be nice for all those reasons, then he will do it for the right reasons, and he will target the places that are going to benefit most, not just the places that earn him £12 an acre.
OK, we're going to end this podcast now, but in a sentence, Farmer Phil, what's going to happen next? Because as I understand it, farmers are now opting out. They're going to leave the environmental scheme on the basis that actually food prices are increasing and that they want to plough up the environmental benefits.
Absolutely. When farmers signed up for ELS, you signed up in lumps of 5 years, so that you agree to maintain it for 5 years. At the end of that 5 or 10 year period, you can opt out. And what will happen is that you will see a number of farmers saying, I can't afford to not cultivate that area or that ground, I'm just going to plough it out. And particularly in the light of reports saying that some of these margins, not all of them, but some of these margins and schemes that score you points have very little environmental value, they'll say, well, what's the point? There's no issue. I'm going to plough it out.
We'll address this more next time, because that wasn't one sentence, Farmer Phil.
Very sorry.
In the meantime, if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast, go to iTunes and click on that subscribe button, and we will occur onto your iPod or your computer every week for another 117 episodes, or whatever it is, because our series is 121 episodes, as you all are probably aware. If you want to go back and listen to previous podcasts, you can find them there too, or go to our website www.wigglywigglers.co.uk, click on podcasts, and you'll see there all the podcasts that we've produced, along with the subjects and the times. So if you just want to go back and listen to a specific topic, you can do that. In the meantime, have a fantastic week. Have a lovely April. Hopefully there won't be too many April spring showers. And Ricardo will be back with us very shortly. Bye from me.
Bye from me.